Hey everyone, this is Robin McClellan here in beautiful New York City. I'm also known as Noteflight Robin. I'm a professional composer and I also work for Noteflight. And I wanted to offer some ideas here on the Composer Workshop about how to transform a rhythm. Sometimes you have a rhythm that you love, a little idea with a certain rhythm, and you want to just mix it up and repeat it and do something different with it the second time. And there's all sorts of cool ways you can do that. It's just a matter of thinking about them and experimenting and trying different things. So I came up with a list of about 10. There's probably many more than that. And I wanted to talk through them with you. So here we go. So here's a little tune I composed. And as soon as I'd written it, I thought, okay, great, that's a great start. What do I do next? I want to maybe repeat the melody, but I don't want it to get boring just repeating the same again and again. So I can put it through all these transformations, and then when I repeat it, it sounds a little different the second time, so the listener thinks to themselves, hey, this sounds familiar, but fresh. It's not exactly the same as what I heard before. So here is the original. Sounds like this. And what I want to do next is called Diminution. It's just a really fancy, maybe more fancy than it's really needed, but it's just a fancy term for make the melody twice as fast. But the important distinction is that we're not actually doubling the tempo of the music. So I put in quarter notes, the same quarter beat from the original melody, to show that the diminution version is just with the note values cut in half. So for every quarter note up here, I have an eighth note, and for every eighth note up here, I have a 16th note. And that sounds like this. So just a little more perky. And then there's diminution altered, and there's no real science to this. All I did was I took the diminution version and I just altered it a little bit. So I have this B, I tied it over to another B 16th note, moved things around a little bit, and it's really, again, the same thing but with a little variation. Sounds like this. So it's kind of fun. Then we have augmentation. Again, a really fancy term for take the melody, make it twice as slow as the original. And again, I've put in that same quarter beat to show that I haven't just cut the tempo in half, I've just cut the note values in half. So for every quarter note up here, I have a half note now. And for every eighth note, I have a quarter note. Now it sounds kind of mellow, like strolling down the street on a Sunday afternoon. Lovely. Okay, another thing we can do is called addition, and it's just what it sounds like. Add some notes that weren't there before. So originally we started on D. Let's add a B at the beginning. We went from D to G. Let's add an E in between. Why not? And so on. And so you get this. And again, there's no single way of doing this. This is just what I came up with as I was thinking, hey, what could I add to this? And again, as with all of these, you hear the relationship with the original, but you also hear the freshness and the variation. So if we can add notes, let's subtract some notes. You have to know the original really well to see what I'm subtracting. Well, I took out the A, stuck in a rest. I also took out this A over here and just repeated the B instead. So pretty simple stuff, but it's fun and it freshens up the melody. What about another fancy term, retrograde, which really just means backwards, taking the exact melody, turning it in reverse. And this is something you don't see a lot in all styles of music, but some composers like J.S. Bach love to do this all the time. And again, you'll see that you hear the relationship with the original even though it's backwards. So just to make sure that you trust that I really did it backwards, let's examine it. So went D, G, A, B quarter notes, D, G, A, B quarter notes. Then we have D, tied E, D, B, A, and a final G quarter note. That's the exact same thing in reverse. So let's hear what that sounds like. One thing that it has in common, obviously, is the same contour, a rising up and then a falling down. Now, there's another way we can do retrograde, which is to only retrograde the rhythms. In other words, we put the rhythms in reverse, but we keep the original pitches in their same order. So this is getting a little more fancy, right? But it's still a pretty simple concept. Keep the exact same pitches you had, so D, G, A, B, D, E, D, B, A, G, but, and we can use this for reference, this is the original rhythms in reverse. This is the original rhythms in their same order, right? Quarter, but the rhythms are in reverse. So quarter, 2/8, 3/8, tied, eighths, eighth, and then 4 quarters. That's what we have here. So let's hear what that sounds like. Okay, getting a little more fancy. This one is a little hard to explain, but in a sense it's very simple as well. And again, there's no exact science to this, so take this in a pretty broad, generalized kind of way of understanding. So think about the original melody this way. It's a series of durations that are either longer or shorter relative to the ones around them, right? So we have 4 quarter notes. Those are relatively longer than the eighth notes. Then we have 2 eighth notes tied, which is the same duration value as a quarter. So we have long, 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 short, long, 3 shorts and a long. What if we take long, 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 short, long, 3 shorts and a long, and we take that as a really broad kind of generalized guide, but change the durations within that. So I'm going to keep my 4 long notes, but change them so now they're long-ish. They're not all exactly the same length. We have a dotted quarter, which is a little longer than a quarter note, then a tied eighth a quarter, which is again the same as the first duration, then a regular quarter, which compared to these two is long-ish, then a dotted eighth, which is now shorter than a quarter note, but a little bit longer than an eighth. Then we get to our 4th duration, which, as we saw, was short relative to the ones around it. I'm going to put in a 16th now. Then we have a long duration, then 3 shorts, and I've made them short-ish, short, and again shortish. And then in the original, we ended with a long. So let's have a long to end this one. Now you may notice a quirk here, which is that I've designated a dotted eighth note here as a longish note, and here the same duration is a shortish note. What I mean by that is that it's all relative, as the saying goes. It's all about what happens around it. So this note is long compared to the note after it. This note is short compared to the note after it. Of course, this one is long compared to the one before it. So again, all relative. This is not an exact science. The goal is to make it sound cool. So you be the judge. Does this sound cool? Well, so I wrote it. I think it sounds pretty cool. I'm not going to make you think that, but when you're composing your own songs, you can play around with it, you can experiment, you can try different things until you get something that you really like, and that's the way that this is going to work best. Now, displacement, again, a fancy term. All this means is that I'm taking my exact original melody and I'm starting it a little bit late. I'm displacing it off of the beat onto the off beats. So this eighth value, this eighth rest, is beat 1. Now the melody starts on the so-called and of beat 1. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So all the notes are coming on the ands, not on the beats. And again, I put in a reference melody, counter melody in the bottom to show the original beat, because if I didn't, it would just sound exactly the same as the original. The note values in this one are identical. Here we go with displacement. And I added a little flourish at the end just to finish it out with a nice cadence there. Okay, imitation. What we just saw can be used for imitation, but imitation is a much broader thing. And again, this is really popular with composers like J.S. Bach and others. And right down to the present day, people use this all the time because it's such an effective way of varying your melody. And what all it boils down to is start your melody, wait a little bit, start it again, same exact melody, so that it lines up with the original entrance of the melody in a different way. You may be familiar with this as a round or a canon. Row, row, row your boat is a great example. That's all this is. Imitation is another fancy term for it. And again, I added a little flourish at the end just to finish it off. Now we get into a couple more complicated and in-depth concepts, but again, they're really not too complicated when you get down to it. The first one is changing the meter but keeping the note values the same. So if you go back to the original, we're in 4/4 time. The downbeat is on the D, then we have 4 beats. The next downbeat is on another D. All I did here is I take the same notes and I move the bar line. So now the downbeat is on D, and then the note before the original next downbeat, B, and then finally on this other B. So in Noteflight, it's not going to sound that different, but if you count along with it, you'll hear the difference. So I'm just going to go back to the beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And in 3/4, that sounds like this. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So experiment with this one because you're not gonna. It may not sink in fully until you really explore it and try it. But the basic procedure is pretty straightforward. Just change the time signature and it'll all line up differently. The next one is similar, but now we're keeping the downbeats on the same pitches that they were originally, but we're altering the durations so that they fit into a different time signature. So notice we're still in 3/4. The downbeat, like the original, is still on the D and the next D. So what I've had to do is take my quarter note B from the original and shorten it, and same with the A, so that those two notes fit into beat 3 of 3/4 instead of beats 3 and 4 of 4/4. And that sounds like this. Okay, last but not least, we have, it's jumping ahead a bit, gradation. Again, a fancy term. Lots of fancy terms for simple concepts. Musicians love fancy terms. I don't know why, and I guess I have to admit I'm one of them because I use them here. But these are really, again, simple ideas. Don't be intimidated or thrown off by these terminology. So gradation takes so it's easiest to explain with this example. Notice this is the diminution version, the version cut in half of the original, and I've taken the short values, which correspond to the 8th and 8th here, which then became 16th and 16th here, and that's what we're starting with down here. And in each successive bar, I move the 16th note 1/16th value earlier in the bar, and then I follow everything out the same. So that's why I've marked these notes red. This 16th red note, D, is on the downbeat, or on the exact beat of beat 3 in this bar. In this one, I've moved it 2/16ths over, so it's on the 3rd 16th of beat 2, or the second, or the half beat of beat 2, the and of 2, as they say. And then I've kept the rest of the durations the same. 8th value is the same as tied 16ths, and then 3/16ths, and then 8th. In the next bar, I've moved it 1/16th earlier, and again, the rest follows out. And then again, 1/16th earlier, now it's on the and of 1. And then finally, the red 16th value comes on beat 1. So that sounds like this. I thought that was so cool that personally I really want to hear it again. And there you have it. Those are some ways that you can take a simple idea that you probably already have come up with, and when you want to repeat it down the way in the piece, all you have to do is grab one of these methods, experiment, get it sounding good. Again, it's not an exact science. All of this is subject to your taste and your ear and what you think sounds best. These are not rules. You can break them. Even if they were rules, you could break them. Do what you want, get it to sound great. These are just ways to kind of stimulate your imagination and get your brain thinking on a different track. So there you have it. Hope it was fun. And if you want, for reference, this is all described in my Behind the Notation article on Noteflight's Notes blog. And that's all for now. Thanks.